Hello, I'm Josh Askvig, AARP North Dakota State Director. Right now, there's 119 million Americans that are age 50 and older. And in North Dakota, this group makes up a third of the population, or about 33.1%. AARP is committed to ensuring that older adults thrive as they age. And to make that happen, we need to understand their needs and opinions. That's why AARP conducts Vital Voices, a comprehensive research program that collects and shares state-specific data, and it identifies issues that matter to older North Dakotans. In 2023, AARP conducted a survey of 703 people over the age of 45 in North Dakota. And we had three big takeaways from that research. The first is that older North Dakotans are worried about retirement, about having enough to save and being able to thrive in their retirement. Two is they have health concerns and they're caregivers with health concerns. And finally, they love their North Dakota communities and they value their independence and want to age in place. So click further to join me and Dr. Aisha Bonner Cozad, who is the Senior Research Manager with AARP, as she and I discuss these takeaways and how they impact our work right here in North Dakota. Hello, AARP North Dakota and friends and partners. AARP conducts Vital Voices, a comprehensive research project that collects and shares state-specific data to identify issues that matter to North Dakotans and other older adults. In 2023, AARP conducted a survey of 703 people over the age of 45 in North Dakota. And I'm Josh Askvig, the AARP North Dakota State Director, and with me to discuss the survey today is Dr. Aisha Bonner Cozad, who is a Senior Research Manager with AARP. Aisha, always good to be talking to you, especially about North Dakota data.
Always great to be with you, Josh.
Awesome. Aisha, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the standout data points in the retirement section of the research?
Sure. So you wouldn't be surprised to know that North Dakotans who are over the age of 45 are worried about retirement. We learned specifically from your survey that 9 in 10 or 91% of North Dakota residents age 45 plus say that having enough income or savings to retire is extremely or very important to them. The importance of having adequate Social Security benefits, and we had about 87% of respondents tell us that that was important to them, has increased since 2020. And notice 87% are concerned about having these benefits. When we look deeper into that data, we see that 65% of that group are concerned they won't have enough to retire. And 1/3 of respondents feel that they're behind in saving for retirement. And by the way, that feeling behind in saving, that is a number we are looking at nationwide, and it is very similar across the country.
So Aisha, what should we read into this? I mean, you just touched on it a little bit, that it's very high across the country, but what else should we read into this?
Well, we know that this data tells us that people are concerned. This concern is growing over time, and that people are looking deeply into their retirement finances. They're looking both at their individual savings and whether or not Social Security itself is going to be adequate. We're seeing this trend nationwide. We know that Americans are not doing the job that they need to save for retirement. So this concern is definitely something that policymakers, individual organizations and businesses, and of course individuals, really need to be paying attention to and making changes in what they're doing to prepare themselves for retirement.
Yeah, and Aisha, we work with you all the time on data, and we use data to help drive our work. And so in North Dakota, part of what that is translating to for our work in 2024 and going forward is work that protects people's pocketbooks and the pocketbooks in North Dakotans. So specifically on the Social Security front, we're going to be out and about engaging with North Dakotans this year to help them understand the importance of Social Security, understand when they can draw retirement, when they should, what that looks like for them and their family. In addition, it didn't show up in this section of the research, but one of the things we know is people are concerned about high utility costs. And AARP North Dakota is often the only organization at the table when utility companies are proposing increased costs. So we're there fighting on behalf of older adults and consumers there. As you know, Aisha, and some of our viewers may know, we do a ton of fraud prevention work between fraud prevention education, fraud prevention advocacy, media interviews, articles, telephone town halls, all of that rolling out this year. So stay tuned for that. And then last but certainly not least, and you just touched on this, the importance of retirement planning. So AARP has, between the North Dakota office and other online tools, planning events, online tools, additional information, and more. So we're working on that. So Aisha, thanks for highlighting the retirement section.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Josh.
Hello, AARP North Dakota members, friends, partners, and others interested. I'm AARP North Dakota State Director Josh Askvig, and I'm here today to talk about Vital Voices, a comprehensive AARP research program that collects and shares state-specific data that helps identify issues that matter to North Dakota's older adults. In 2023, AARP conducted a survey of 703 people over the age of 45 in North Dakota, and I'm super excited to talk about the health impacts today with Dr. Aisha Bonner Cozad, who is a Senior Research Manager with AARP. Aisha, good to see you as always.
Good to see you, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So talk a little bit about what did we find out about the health concerns of North Dakotans 45 and older?
Sure. Well, no surprise. Issues around healthcare and healthcare access have just skyrocketed over time, especially in response to the pandemic. In our Vital Voices survey for North Dakota, we see that 91% of respondents said that having adequate health insurance is important to them. The importance of being able to afford healthcare expenses, we see 89% of people said that was important. 83% said paying for prescription drugs. And both of these data points have increased since we did this survey in 2020, and they went up by 8 points. So that's probably the sort of best indicator of what we're seeing, how the pandemic has really changed a lot of things in our life. To see an increase of 8 points on a topic that generally has a high degree of importance to people, right? Staying healthy is important. That's pretty telling.
Yeah, that's what jumped out at me too when you and I talked about this survey data was some of the other data points are important, but to see those two areas specifically about the growth in people concerned about costs of healthcare in general and specifically about prescription drug costs. Are there any other insights about these data points, Aisha, that you think are important to point out?
Well, I pointed out the heightened awareness. That's certainly something to keep in mind. And the increased emphasis on affordability, both in terms of healthcare expenses and prescription drugs, just again points out that people really understand that the impact of their healthcare cost is a major consideration for their financial health. And I think particularly now in our society, as we really recognize how important it is to stay healthy so that you can have a long lifespan. The importance of this issue is just going to continue to grow. And again, I think this is a clarion call for policymakers, for businesses, for HMOs, and for individuals to really focus on how do we reduce cost? How do we make sure people have access? How do we make sure that we're baking in healthcare access as we age in our country?
So I think that's a great pivot to what AARP does with this information and how AARP North Dakota uses this work. And specifically, we last legislative session in 2023, we were fighting to lower prescription drug costs in the North Dakota legislature, getting a bill passed that would limit out-of-pocket insulin costs for public employees in North Dakota, with a goal of going back to the next session and trying to expand that to the general market on insulin costs, and also looking at other ways to put downward pressure on prescription drugs. We also in North Dakota supported federal efforts to lower prescription drug costs between Medicare negotiation and some of the other discussions that are happening at the federal level. And on that healthcare access issue, one of the things that we know people have a ton of questions about is about navigating Medicare and enrolling in Medicare and what that means. And so we held Medicare enrollment sessions. We partner with the state of North Dakota and others to help folks understand as they're approaching Medicare and those decisions, how do they figure out what's going to be best for them and their family. So Aisha, thanks for joining me to talk about the health data that we found in the Vital Voices survey. It's good to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Hello, AARP North Dakota members, friends, partners, and others who are interested in Vital Voices, which is a comprehensive research program that AARP conducts, where it collects and shares state-specific data to identify issues that matter to North Dakota's older adults. In 2023, AARP conducted a survey of 703 people over the age of 45 in North Dakota. And I'm Josh Askvig, State Director of AARP North Dakota. And with me today to talk about the importance of independence and aging in place is Dr. Aisha Bonner Cozad, who is the Senior Research Manager with AARP. Aisha, always good to talk to you.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So Aisha, one of the things that I know you want to talk about, but that just jumps off the page when we look at the multitude of things we asked about, was North Dakotans love their communities and they want to stay in their communities. So can you talk a little bit about the data?
Absolutely. So when we looked at an area, we sometimes refer to it as livable communities or independent living. We noticed that North Dakota residents rate their communities as good or very good places to live. And so it really makes sense that 7 in 10 would prefer to receive care for themselves or loved ones in their home, in the community that they like living in. We also know that about 2/3, 65% of North Dakota residents age 45 plus are either currently providing or have provided care in the past to an adult relative or friend. This survey also showed us that 79% of North Dakotan residents want to have services available to age in place, and 78 want to stay in their homes as they age.
So Aisha, can you talk about, is this just a North Dakota trend? Is this a national trend? How does this data about people being interested in aging in place show up? Like, how does North Dakota stack compared to North Dakota's opinions on this issue stack up compared to other places around the country?
Sure. So AARP has a really profound interest in the concept of aging in place. We've been tracking this data in this particular area for decades. Over time, the enthusiasm for aging in place has significantly increased. There's a strong desire among individuals to remain in their communities and to continue residing in their homes. And this trend is not limited to specific regions. Rather, it is prevalent across the entire country. The data might be slightly different in different places, but it's very high. I mean, definitely more than the majority. So this is being able to stay in your home, having the resources to stay in your home, having the support to stay in your home. These are things that the American public wants.
So is there a difference? You said there's not a difference across the regions across the country. Is there an urban or rural difference in that data, either in North Dakota or elsewhere?
So this is one of the things that always tickles me, right? Because when you think about the public discourse, there's so much ascribed to either living in a rural or an urban place, as if the people there are somehow fundamentally different and what they need is fundamentally different. But that is not the truth. The fact of the matter is, when we talk to people in urban and rural and all the other types of geography, when we talk to people, when we ask them about the things that they want, they tell us the same things. They want to send their kids to good schools. They want to have jobs that allow them to live comfortably. They want to live in a place that is beautiful and safe. These are the things that people want, and they want them no matter where they live. And the same is true. People in rural places, even though they do often move as they get older for health because they don't have access to the health care they need,
Yep.
that's not what they want. They want
Yeah.
to stay in their homes, and they want the resources to be able to do that no matter where they live.
And it's an important part of the work we do to try and support rural aging in place as well with partners. But I know there's another piece, and I know it was briefly showed on the screen earlier, but I think we can show this last piece about getting places and the idea of it kind of reinforces the independence piece. You want to talk a little bit about this slide?
Sure. So the big news here, when you look at the data, 81% of respondents said that getting places independently is important. And I do work in that area of research for AARP, and so I've been looking at this data for a while, and I've always found it curious. But contextually, when you think about the United States, we are a car driving country. We have had a love affair with the car for a very long time. And so there is certainly desire, a preference for most Americans to be able to transport themselves under their own volition, right? Whether it's driving their own car, having a bus stop that they feel comfortable and safe using, having public transit that's safe and accessible for people all throughout the lifespan. However, riding their bike, riding their motorcycle, whatever it is, people want to be able to determine for themselves when and where they go someplace. And that certainly bears itself out in the data from North Dakota. So it's not a surprise to see that data, but again, I think it reinforces all of the other data points about aging in place, and you know, living at aging over time. We just I think politicians really need to wake up and see what the people are asking for. They want these opportunities to live life on their own terms.
Aisha, I appreciate that. And I think, again, it goes to reinforce the work we're doing in North Dakota as a result of this data. You know, we've been starting to do more and more local advocacy on what makes communities great for all. So advocating to support public transit when it's needed, looking at how do we support and help reinforce housing options for individuals to stay in their communities and age in place in both rural and urban North Dakota communities. North Dakota urban is a different urban than a lot of places around the country, as you well know, and we've talked about this many times. I think the other thing we've done, and while we didn't talk about it a ton here, if folks want to dig into the data more, there's a ton of caregiving that happens in North Dakota, and so raising the importance of caregiving needs, caregiving resources, caregiving planning. I can tell you, a staff of 5 people in North Dakota, all of us have our own caregiving stories that we've been providing care for an old loved one that needs that assistance to stay safe and independent. We specifically worked during the last legislative session to support funding for accessible and affordable housing, access to a safe and affordable long-term care services, supporting enhanced senior nutrition funding, enhancements to the Aging and Disability Resource Link, and other things to help those 62,000 unpaid caregivers that do that labor of love every day. And then, well, I mentioned this, I think it's worth also calling to attention. We have great partners with AARP in the national office, A through U, and this type of research, but also I want to call out our Livable team that really helps us support communities being better for everyone. We call it our Livable work. We work with the Livable team, but we do a program every year, and it's currently open. If you're watching this before March 6th of 2024, there's currently an application period open for what we call the AARP Community Challenge Grants. Since 2017, the Community Challenge Grants program has funded over 1,300 projects nationwide, 25 of them in North Dakota, over $200,000, actually over $214,000 in North Dakota communities. And they've been projects that are everything from adult exercise equipment in city parks to helping a small town grocery store shift its service to self-service to make sure it can stay open and provide adequate groceries and resources for folks to be able to stay in those communities as well. And so, Aisha, I love digging into the data. We, as you know, and I think you can attest to, we use this data to help drive our work and decide the type of work we're going to do. And I think your point is not lost on me about helping policymakers and others pay attention, because older adults are a growing trend even in North Dakota.
Absolutely. As always, pleasure to be with you, Josh.
Thanks, Aisha.